Daniel Harper did not plan to stop at the overlook, yet his hands slowed the car as soon as the road opened to a wide view of hills covered in fire-colored trees, and in that moment he felt something loosen inside his chest, something tight he had carried for years without naming it, because he was 56 and used to holding things together even when they felt broken. And this solo foliage trip through Vermont was supposed to be simple, just a quiet drive, just trees and time, no memories chasing him, no questions waiting for answers, but the truth followed him anyway, riding in the passenger seat like an old companion, reminding him of the empty house back in Connecticut, the quiet mornings, the polite distance between him and the life he once shared, a marriage that did not end in anger or betrayal but slowly faded like summer light. And as he parked the car and stepped out into the cold air, the smell of leaves and earth hit him hard, sharp and clean, waking something long asleep, because nature did not care about his past or his age, it simply existed, bold and honest, and Daniel found himself standing at the railing, breathing deeply, when he noticed he was not alone. A woman stood a few steps away, her back turned, wrapped in a gray scarf, still and thoughtful, not looking at her phone, not taking pictures, just watching the valley as if she were listening to it, and Daniel felt a strange pull, not attraction yet, just curiosity, the kind that comes when two quiet people recognize something familiar in silence, and before he could stop himself, he shifted his weight, his boot scraped the ground, and she turned, her eyes calm but alert, her expression soft but guarded, and for a second neither of them spoke, the air between them full but not awkward, until Daniel gave a small nod, the kind people use when they want to say hello without forcing conversation, and she returned it. And that should have been the end, yet something made him linger, maybe the way her eyes held a hint of sadness without weakness, maybe the way she stood like someone who had learned patience the hard way, and then it happened, small and ordinary. He dropped the lid to his coffee cup, it rolled toward her, and she bent to pick it up, smiling as she handed it back, her voice gentle when she said, "Happens to me all the time," and Daniel laughed, surprised by how natural it felt, surprised by the sound of his own voice, and he thanked her, noticing the slight Canadian accent when she spoke again, mentioning the trees, how the colors were better than she expected, and Daniel agreed, telling her he had waited years to take this trip, and she said she almost cancelled hers too, and without meaning to, they began walking along the short path near the overlook, side by side but not too close, trading simple details, names, where they were from, learning that her name was Claire Bennett, 52, from Toronto, traveling alone for the first time in her life, and Daniel felt a quiet respect settle in him at that, because he knew how hard it was to choose solitude when life had taught you to lean on others, and though neither shared their deeper reasons, those reasons hovered nearby, felt but unspoken, like leaves still clinging to branches before the fall, and as they walked, the pace quickened naturally, the conversation flowing without effort, touching on small towns, long drives, favorite seasons, the strange comfort of being a stranger somewhere new. And Daniel realized he was present in a way he had not been in years, not thinking ahead, not replaying the past, just here, with this woman, under this sky. And when they reached the end of the trail, the moment stretched, neither rushing to leave, both aware that something brief but meaningful had already formed, and Claire checked her phone, hesitated, then mentioned an inn near Stowe she planned to stay at, adding with a soft smile that the soup was rumored to be terrible but the fireplace was worth it, and Daniel felt a spark of decision, quiet but clear, as he told her he had planned the same stop, and in that instant, the solo trip was no longer truly solo, and Daniel did not know where the road would lead next, but for the first time in a long while, he felt open to finding out. Claire Bennett had not expected conversation to feel this easy, yet as she walked beside Daniel the path seemed shorter, the air warmer, and her thoughts lighter than they had been in years. Because she was used to moving through life quietly now, handling days alone, making choices without explaining them to anyone, and this trip through New England was meant to prove she could still stand on her own, that grief had not closed her off from the world, but meeting Daniel shifted that goal in a way that felt gentle, not threatening, and as they continued talking beyond the overlook, their steps quickened, the words flowing with surprising speed, touching on places they had visited, work they once loved, changes that came with age, and the strange feeling of starting again when most people thought life should already be settled, and Claire found herself smiling more than she expected, because Daniel listened closely, not waiting to speak, not correcting or fixing, just listening, and that alone made him feel different from the many polite people she met back home, and though neither shared the full weight of their pasts, hints slipped through in pauses and tone, in the way Daniel spoke about a house that felt too large now, and the way Claire described learning to enjoy mornings alone, and the trail curved through trees heavy with color, leaves falling around them like quiet applause, pushing them forward, and when they stopped near a small wooden bridge, Daniel offered her his coffee, joking that it tasted better shared, and she accepted, surprised by her own comfort, surprised by how natural the closeness felt without crossing any lines. And in that moment she realized how long it had been since someone made her feel seen without asking for anything in return, and the thought scared her slightly, because connection meant risk, and risk meant the chance of loss, but she pushed the fear aside, choosing to stay present, and as they walked again, Daniel asked why she chose this trip, and Claire paused, then answered honestly without details, saying she wanted to feel alive somewhere new, and Daniel nodded, understanding without pressing, sharing that he wanted to remember who he was when no one expected anything from him, and that shared understanding deepened something between them, unspoken but strong. And by the time they reached the edge of the trail, the sky had shifted, clouds moving fast, light changing, and the moment felt fragile, like it could end if neither acted, and Claire felt the pull of choice, knowing she could easily say goodbye and return to her planned solitude, but instead she mentioned the inn she had booked, the fireplace, the simple comfort of warmth at the end of a long day, and Daniel's response came quickly, almost too quickly, saying he had planned to stop there too. And Claire wondered if that was true or if he had simply chosen to follow the moment, and the thought made her smile, because she realized she was doing the same, and they walked back toward their cars together, the conversation still flowing, laughter breaking through more freely now, the connection no longer tentative but still respectful, and as they reached the parking area, Claire noticed the Ontario plates on her car and the Connecticut ones on his. Two different lives paused in the same place. And for the first time since she had left Toronto, she felt less like a traveler passing through and more like someone standing at the edge of something meaningful, not yet defined, but real, and as they agreed to drive to the inn separately and meet there, the simple plan felt like a quiet promise, not spoken aloud but understood, and when Claire got into her car, she sat for a moment before starting the engine, her hands resting on the wheel, her heart steady but awake, realizing that this unexpected meeting had already changed the tone of her journey, turning a solo trip into a shared chapter she had not known she was ready to begin. The inn welcomed them with warmth the moment they stepped inside, wood floors creaking softly under their feet, the smell of firewood and soup filling the air, and without discussing it they chose seats near the fireplace, close enough to share heat but distant enough to keep things easy, and the pace of the evening moved quickly, as if time itself had decided not to slow them down, because after a full day of driving and walking, comfort mattered more than formality, and as they ate bowls of soup that were indeed bland and laughed about it, the laughter came easier now, free of hesitation, and Claire noticed how Daniel's face relaxed when he smiled, the lines around his eyes telling stories of years lived fully and carefully, while Daniel noticed how Claire carried herself with quiet strength, not guarded but measured, like someone who had learned when to speak and when to stay still. And as plates were cleared and the inn grew quieter, they stayed by the fire, the flames reflecting in their eyes, and conversation deepened without becoming heavy, moving fast yet smooth, touching on family, children grown and gone, careers that once defined them, and the strange freedom that came when expectations faded, and Claire spoke about loneliness not as something bitter but as a space she was still learning to live inside, explaining how after years of caring for another person, the silence could feel both peaceful and painful, and Daniel listened, understanding more than he said, sharing that his marriage ended slowly, not with anger but with distance, and that kind of ending left more questions than answers, and in those shared truths something softened between them, attraction building not through touch but through trust, through the choice to be honest without asking for comfort, and the fire cracked, pushing warmth into the room, and for a moment the world outside felt far away, reduced to falling leaves and darkening roads, and Claire realized she felt safe, not because she expected anything, but because nothing was being rushed, and Daniel felt the same, aware of the pull between them but choosing patience, knowing that some connections deserved space to breathe, and when the clock above the desk chimed softly, Claire glanced at it, surprised by how quickly the evening had passed, and she stood, adjusting her scarf, her voice calm but thoughtful as she said she would be leaving early in the morning to continue her drive, and Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of that simple fact, because endings always arrived faster than expected, and they walked toward the door together, pausing just inside as the fire burned behind them, and for a brief second neither spoke, the moment full but not uncomfortable, and then Claire smiled, thanking him for the evening, and Daniel replied that he was glad he stopped at the overlook, and outside the night air was cold and sharp, the sky clear, stars faint but steady, and they stood beside their cars, close but not touching, both aware that this meeting might be brief yet meaningful, and as Claire said goodnight, Daniel felt a quiet ache mixed with gratitude, knowing that even if this was all it would still matter, and as they parted for the night, each carried the warmth of the evening with them, unsure of what morning would bring but certain that something honest had been shared, something rare and worth remembering. Morning arrived quickly, the kind of morning that feels clear and honest, with frost clinging to the edges of windows and pale sunlight stretching across the parking lot, and Daniel woke before his alarm, his mind already moving, not restless but alert, as if the night had shifted something inside him, and when he stepped outside with his bag, the air filled his lungs sharply, reminding him that this was real, not a dream, and across the lot Claire emerged from her room at nearly the same time, bundled in her coat, her hair loose, her expression calm but thoughtful, and they smiled. When they saw each other, a simple recognition that needed no explanation, and they stood near their cars, the engines still cold, speaking easily despite the early hour, talking about routes, breakfast stops, the long miles ahead, and yet both felt the pull of something deeper beneath the surface, and Claire admitted she had not planned to meet anyone on this trip, that she came seeking quiet and instead found connection, and Daniel responded honestly, saying he came hoping to feel something again, even if he did not know what that something was, and the words settled between them without pressure, without demand, and in that space of honesty they exchanged phone numbers, not as a dramatic gesture but as a practical choice, a small step forward that felt right, and Claire smiled, a mix of hope and caution in her eyes, because she knew distance and time could change many things, but she also knew regret grew stronger when chances were ignored, and as she turned to her car, Daniel felt the urge to say more, to promise more, but he stopped himself, understanding that real beginnings did not need grand speeches, only intention, and as Claire's blue sedan pulled out of the lot and disappeared down the road, Daniel watched until it was gone, feeling a quiet warmth spread through him, not excitement that burned fast but something steady and grounding, and he realized that this trip had already given him what he needed, not answers, not certainty, but the reminder that life could still surprise him, that connection was not limited by age or past loss, and as he got into his own car and started the engine, the road ahead no longer felt empty, and miles later, as autumn trees rushed past, Daniel smiled to himself, knowing that whatever happened next, this meeting had opened a door he once believed was closed, and somewhere ahead on another highway, Claire drove with the same calm sense of possibility, both of them carrying the understanding that some encounters are not meant to change everything at once, but to gently shift the direction of the heart, making the future feel open again.